Spain, and my role in Mental Health Ireland is a development officer. My regions are Dublin North, Kildare, and West Wicklow. So my colleagues today are also development officers. They join me, and they are scattered around the country. And I'll ask them to come off mute and to introduce themselves shortly. From a housekeeping perspective, today's call is 1 hour long. We have a Q&A option, so you can drop a question into the chat, and we'll look to answer the question. We will record today's webinar and post it to the Mental Health Ireland's YouTube page. So the panel discussion today is to share insights and tools and real life experiences to help us all to start strong in 2026. The objective of the webinar is to take the opportunity to pause, reflect, and to create space for well-being as we step into the new year. We'll explore some practical ways to reset mentally, emotionally, and physically, so 2026 becomes a year of balance and growth. So with that, I'll stop sharing the screen. I'll ask my colleagues to jump off, come on camera and to come off mute, and we can get to do the introductions. So jump into whoever wants to go first. Killian, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks a million, Carol. Delighted to be here. So, yeah, my name is Killian, and I am the Development Officer working with Mental Health Ireland, and I cover the Midwest region, Clare, Limerick, and North Tipperary. Yeah, just looking forward to this discussion. So, yeah, I'll pass it back to yourself, Carol. Thanks.
Thanks, Ian. And Gina, if you'd like to jump in and introduce.
Thanks, Carol. Hi, everyone. I'm Gina Delaney, and I'm the Development Officer in the Southeast, so Waterford, Wexford, Carlow, Kilkenny, and South Tipperary. So thanks for having us, Carol.
Thank you, Gina. And Robert, if you'd like to jump in.
Thanks, Karen. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Wilson, and I am the Development Officer for Calvin Monaghan. I'm going to say I'm the new Development Officer because I'm only in my 5th month. So delighted to be part of this discussion and looking forward to the next hour. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. And to Sarah.
Thanks, Carl. My name is Sarah Fahy, and I'm the Development Officer for Galway City and County. And looking forward to getting stuck into this chat. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you very much, folks. So yeah, I said to the folks earlier, we'll do it alphabetical. I'll start with Killian, and we start with our first question. We have some questions set out. We always work in co-production in Mental Health Ireland. So we had a chat last week as a team. We discussed some questions, and we just hope that the attendees today can take something away from today's call. And so yeah, we'll jump straight in, with the first question, which I'll put to you, Killian, is what does a gentle reset look like for you as we step into 2026?
Yeah, very broad question, I think. What stands out for me is the word gentle in the question about, I suppose, not trying to take on loads of different habits or taking on new things. It's probably just taking on one or two things and doing that in a gentle way. And I suppose having self-compassion that if I am not as motivated some days or if I'm not as disciplined, that it's okay. To be gentle with myself, to have that self-compassion that bad days will happen, good days will happen, but I suppose take them in my stride really and try to achieve certain goals within the year as well. And yeah, I suppose I have a couple of things that I want to tick off in the year, but I'll take my time with them as well. And it's important to be able to do that, taking things step by step, day by day, because life will have various challenges, stressors. But yeah, it's just being gentle in my approach and gently going about it, how I do it day to day, week to week as well. So yeah, that's probably it, Carol. Yeah, thanks.
No, thanks for that, Killian. I like the approach on the one or two things. You're not going to try and take on a multitude, and the self-compassion piece and the motivation piece. You got to look for what comes out in you in terms of motivation. So no, thank you very much for sharing that. Gina, we'll jump to you if you'd like to share.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think I always kind of find a kind of a push and a pull within me to want to do as much as I can do, but also knowing that I don't want to set myself up for failure. So it's kind of trying to find that sweet spot of, having something to aim for, but also being kind and compassionate as well, like what Killian was saying. So I found a lovely little idea over the Christmas break, and it was to pick a theme for the year. And I suppose if you have a theme, then that, it kind of just keeps you on track. So that's what I did. And yeah, I can share a little bit more about that later on, maybe.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm intrigued already. I love the fact that you've got a theme for the year, so you can stick to your kind of your boundaries or whatever. And I also love the fact that you mentioned the compassion piece, and that's kind of what's key to this whole gentle reset. So, no, lovely. Thank you for sharing that, Gina. And we'll hear more from you later. And then, Robert, I'll jump to you.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, so for me, I suppose my reset is dictated in some way by a change in circumstances with taking on this new role only recently. So it's given me the opportunity to focus on things like work-life balance, which was in some ways a foreign concept in the past. Uh, I've had the opportunity to upskill and being able to onboard with Mental Health Ireland at the gentle pace, and also I suppose at the start of a new year, I've been able to come back and look at what opportunities are on my desk as opposed to what mountain of problems are on the desk, and even just being able to reframe things like that to me is a nice reset. Um, I suppose outside of work, I like running and things. In the past, I would have always put myself under pressure. Like the start of 2025, I started out, did the park run the very first Saturday, and didn't get back until November after that experience. So now, I'm learning to leave the watch and focus on the journey and enjoy that.
Yeah, lovely. No, lovely, Robert. Thank you for that. And I get you on the whole running piece. It's, you don't want to go too fast too soon, but the opportunity versus the problem is a great call out. And look at the flip on that. Look at the positive rather than the negative. So, no, thanks for that, Robert. Appreciate that. Yes, Sarah, we'll jump to you for the same question, which is, what does a gentle reset look like for you?
Yeah, I think thanks, Carl. It's probably a summary of what everyone else has just shared. Kind of like Killian mentioned, the word is in the title. So in the past, I suppose I probably wouldn't have approached the new year so gently. I've obviously learned a lot more about well-being over time, but I would have fallen into that pattern of kind of pushing, fixing, striving. So the idea of a gentle reset now looks, I think, a lot more like reflection than planning. So not maybe mapping out the year ahead, but looking back at what's just passed, something I'm only learning more and more about, that there is space for that. So what supported me well last year, what can I carry forward, what practices do I want to continue, and then I suppose that new year narrative that dominates on, what can you change, what can you stop, what can you give up, kind of moving away from that and looking more about, what can I continue? So maybe, yeah, less about correcting, but more about reflection, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love the reflection piece. And it's great to look back on what worked well for you in 2025 and what you're going to bring forward. That's kind of one of our questions that pops up later on as well. But that's brilliant. Appreciate your time there, folks, on the first question. We'll jump into the second question, and I'm going to just reverse the order. I'll go start with you, Sarah, if you don't mind. And with this question, we agreed on is, what is one thing you would love to experience more often this year, and how can you create those moments in your everyday life? So, what is the one thing you would love to experience more of this year, and how can you create more of those moments in your life?
I'm going to choose one of the 5 ways, actually, because when I thought about this, it was centered around learning. So I know we learn lots every day in this kind of role, and working with Mental Health Ireland, you're constantly learning. And I, like Robert, made a career change recently, and that learning new information was really beneficial, and it gave me a lot more confidence. Often we don't think about that learning, kind of setting a goal to learn something new can bring you more confidence. There's plenty of research around to show that. So yeah, I think like I tend to prioritize gaining new information, but maybe learning a new skill is something I'd like to do. There's a ukulele sitting on my shelf there for many years, but it's about finding the space to do that. And again, going back to that that word space, to kind of create the space to sit down, maybe not flick on the TV like, like a habit after a long day would be, but I tend to prioritize things like exercise. So maybe moving away from that and prioritizing other things that you want to get to. So yeah, for me, it's about creating the space to learn something.
Taking a wide view of what you're doing, what you'd like to do and stuff. Yeah, I like the ukulele analogy, or well, it's actually a real life example. So yeah, we'll stay tuned on that one. Thanks for that, Sarah. And we go back in the reverse order. So Robert, if you'd like to jump in and answer that one, and if you need me
Yep.
to repeat out the question, let me know. You got
No,
it?
no problem.
Yeah.
Look, I had a spiel prepared for this about volunteering and that, but it's something that happened to me yesterday evening that I just want to share. I was at an event where I had a stand with Mental Health Ireland, um, and there was, during the course of the evening, that advertised a casual choir at 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, all of us there were about 40 or 50 people. We were all wondering where's the choir. And then the choir director appeared and announced, "You're the choir." So all of us who were there, those of who had stands, those who were visiting the stands, we all joined in. She taught us a couple of songs, one of them from Fleetwood Mac and one of them from Cyndi Lauper. And, there was such a diversity of people there. I would tend to hide behind my stand in a situation like that. But the choir director was a former colleague of mine and she wasn't having any of it. So I
Mhm.
had to join in with everyone. Even did a little bit of movement, which, probably a bit scary to watch. But I suppose my point is it was a kind of a spontaneous moment for all of us. And that's something I would maybe like to. I know you can't plan to be spontaneous, but you can plan to be open to opportunities like that and to jump in. And like as I say, it was an event for Blue Monday. It was the crack was mighty. Such a diversity of people there, and all taking part with one voice. So yeah, I suppose a little bit more spontaneity maybe would be something I'd like to experience.
Yeah, no, it's really good. So it's something you weren't really planning for. It's something you hadn't really thought too much about, but yet you sound like you've enjoyed the experience. So spontaneity sounds great, Robert, and maybe that's the kind of the could be your theme for the year. So brilliant. No, lovely. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. And Gina, we'll come to you. Same question.
Okay. So yeah, it's my team then. So what I want to kind of experience more of then is my team. So and it's so simple. It's just peace and joy. So like just more peace, more joy. And of course, like all of us could, think about what does peace and joy mean to me and come up with something different. So, and so how I want to kind of put that into action then more so that I can experience more peace and joy. For me, then I get that through my spirituality, just, like kind of just my own practices and like nature plays a big part in that, just being out in nature and kind of observing nature. So, I was just kind of thinking earlier, I know a lot of the time, many people will maybe go for a walk in nature and maybe have the earphones in and like that can be great because it's a great opportunity to learn, absolutely. But I think sometimes we're just taking out the earphones and just tuning into what's happening and the sounds and if you're lucky enough to be in the countryside, what's happening around you. So nature, kind of spirituality, creativity. I find a lot of kind of peace and joy through creativity in various forms. And then doing my activities alone as well as with other people. Like just love being in my own company. I get so much just peace and joy from that. But equally, I buzz off other people's energy. So it's like just getting the balance there around that. Like so, peace and joy. That's what I'm out for this year.
I love that. No, I love it. I love the fact you have a team, and I love the team, peace and joy, and the balance you're talking about there, which is working alone, being creative, connected to the earth, connected to nature, and then also finding time to spend time with others. That was mentioned earlier. I think Killian mentioned the balance piece, so that's great. That's a great thing to have in your mind about balance. Yeah, lovely, lovely. Thanks, Gina. Thanks for sharing that. And Killian, yeah, same question to your good self.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. I was thinking around this, and I was thinking like every year on year, life can just fly by, and the years just go so fast. So, what I'd like to do this year and to create more moments of it is just be more present in the day to day and just take stock of what's going on. I talk about this a lot, and it's the glimmer moments. So the glimmer moments would be around finding small little pieces of joy in life that make you smile. And this could be the simplest thing in the world, like a cup of coffee in the morning, a smile from a loved one or something like that. And yeah, it's just to embrace them and acknowledge them rather than rushing through the day of to start work or to whatever, finish a task you have to do. But yeah, it's to being aware of the glimmer moments, being present in that moment, appreciating them, and just being grateful for the life that I have as well. So yeah, that's what I like to create more of in everyday life, but obviously can be challenging at the same time, but I'll do my best.
No, I love that. I love that. And we're coming up with some nice keywords here. And I love that little phrase, the glimmer moment. So that's if you have that in the back of your head, you're talking about the coffee, you're talking about the smile, you're talking about maybe, grounding yourself in the morning before you open your first email or whatever it may be. It's a great mantra to have, a great team to have. Lovely. No, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing all of those. We're on to our third question, and we'll go back through the same kind of format. I'll come to you, Killian, on this one. We've no questions, anything in the chat, so we're good. So question: what relationships or connections or supports do you want to nurture? Do you want to nurture your well-being? Which ones do you want to double down on? So relationships, connections, or sports? Do you want to nurture your well-being? Help nurture your well-being.
Yeah, I think as I was thinking around this, I'm getting older and my circle, I think, is getting a bit smaller amongst my group of friends. We all have our own busy lives. A lot of my mates have kids as well. So it's just, I suppose, prioritizing a meetup with the lads, and we did that this weekend. I went to the gym in Galway, two of the lads drove up and went for a session in the gym, and it was lovely. And we just had the chats. We were over an hour and a bit in there, and a good part of that was just having the chat. So I want more of that rather than going till weeks and months without seeing each other. Just doing things that we all enjoy and having that connection with each other as well. And yeah, I feel like. I want to meet up with my friends a lot more and build that connection and see what people are doing. And that's what I want to double down on this year and just being able to do different things, activities, rather than just going to the pub or whatever, just going for coffee and having the chats as well and just enjoying our company. And because we're friends for years and years and years, and just be able to have the crack and have a catch up as well. So I'll be doubling down on that, the friendships that I have in life.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the circle of friends piece is key, right? And it's kind of like, if you sit back and wait for it to happen, it might not happen. But if you take the proactive approach and yeah, generate the first move, if you like. Yeah, there is a question in. Thanks for that, Gina. There is a question popped up. I think it's from Brian. We'll jump to that at the very end of this section, if you don't mind, and then we can see if we can share some light or share some thoughts on it. So yeah, we are with Gina, and yeah, do you have the question, Gina? Do you need me to remind you what it is?
Nope, I'm good,
No, you're
thanks.
good. You're
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So I suppose, yeah, like what I want to work on then and to nurture, like around my relationships and that is, I have some really good connections and relationships and groups and that I'm part of. But it came about through, a process, I suppose, because I realized a few years ago, went through, a difficult time and a lot of life changes came at the same time. And when I kind of evaluated, I realized that actually, I didn't have maybe as strong, connections and friendships and things like that around me. So I'm so blessed and so lucky now at the minute, and I really value all of those friendships and connections. And I want to continue working on those, and they involve kind of my interests now, so they're all around, like, say, being outdoors and kind of, nature, going down to the river for a dip in the river and going for a walk or going for a run. They're about going out with neighbours for a dinner in the local community cafe, and just like lots of lovely people. And I suppose I want to just continue to work on that. And I suppose I'm sharing that because at different times in our lives, like, you know, things won't always be exactly how we want them to be, but you can work around and kind of invest in those and nurture them and, really change it around and then hopefully continue to invest in those. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that, Gina. I love the connection piece, and I love the fact that you're considering the nurturing piece. So like, it's a two-way thing, right? It does take two people to make the effort. So yeah, lovely, lovely, the great thoughts and good time of year to do that. Thank you very much for that. Robert, I'll come to you on the same question.
Yeah, I suppose what I'm sharing is similar to what Killian was saying. But over Christmas, I went to a funeral of a former vice principal. I went to a small rural secondary school, so a couple hundred people. And at that funeral, obviously, there were a lot of people there who I went to school with. Some I hadn't seen since I went to school, but others I would have seen over the years at times, and lost contact. Maybe. So something I'd like to do this year is to reconnect with people without the need for someone to die, obviously, to have to go, to meet up and just catch up, see where people are, see, who has changed, who hasn't, who's the same, but making that reconnection, which is one of the 5 ways to well-being and connecting with people. And I suppose over the years, with life happening, I've lost some of those connections. So how I'm going to do that, I'm listening out for ideas because I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do it, but I want to intentionally try and do that this year if I can at all.
Yeah, that's lovely, Robert. Thank you. And I do agree with you on you don't have to wait till a funeral or a family event comes about to reconnect or a community event, but take the proactive approach. Maybe it's through a walk or a run or whatever it may be, it's definitely a concerted effort that will help bring that forward. And yeah, Sarah, I'll come to you. Same question for you.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, I really like what everyone has shared there because they're similar but different, you know. And I think what I want to nurture to support well-being in terms of kind of connections and relationships is more along maybe what Sheena was talking about. I know we all have to nurture kind of closer relationships, family, immediate family, like really support our well-being in that sense. But I've really been thinking about this year strengthening those weaker ties. So, I think there's real value there. So myself, I recently started playing hockey again. I used to play at school, but I can see there's people there that I used to go to school with that are coming back now many years, I won't say how many years later. But yeah, I think to go back to what Robert was saying, it's really in the effort, isn't it? It's that conscious effort to, choosing to engage, to say hello, in order to build that connection where it might not naturally happen on its own. And I think as we get maybe older, that doesn't come so easily as when we were younger. But I think strengthening the weaker ties is, they can be as significant as really close relationships, and they bring something really important to day-to-day life. I think more connection is always good, and it can be a lot more meaningful then too. So yeah, that's kind of
Yeah. No, lovely, lovely. I love that all four have said similar things in terms of being proactive, making a concerted effort, and actually going in person to meet people or join a hockey group or whatever it may be, and park run, whatever. But we can all live on WhatsApp, we can all live on tech, which is fine to keep in touch, absolutely. But it's great to get out and meet people in person. I'll jump to the question that Brian popped into the chat. And it looks like Brian's, agreeing. So yes, it is hard to break the habit of planning and over planning in January rather than reflection. Are there any habits on how to go gently with this? So I think Brian's talking about over planning in January and focusing more on the reflection piece. Sarah, could I come to you on that one? Maybe we just get one voice on that one and we can keep going then.
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, there's many kind of tools, aren't there, and tips we can do with this, but the one that works for me is the journaling and the writing down, So we are all probably given a 2026 journal to plan for the year ahead, but it might be turning it around and turning it upside down and using the notes on the back to give yourself the questions to really look back on what's happened. So it's probably starting with 3 questions, what went well, what did I enjoy, what supported me, and yeah, and kind of moving with that. So that's what I'd say.
Looking back on three quick key questions. Yeah. Is there anybody else like to jump in on that one while we have that question out in the forum?
Well, I was
Gina?
just hoping that Sarah would answer because I was going to say, yeah, it was reflection, like, yeah, like kind of, and exactly that, like what kind of worked well, or what would I like more of as a result of that, and what would I like less of, and that can kind of guide you then to see, well, then if I want more of X, I need to do Y, and if I want less of something, I suppose then I need to also do something about that, isn't it? So yeah, reflecting back, what was good, what was not so good, yeah.
Yeah, we spoke at one of our training courses around topic came up around a personal audit, right? A personal audit could be a lot of various things. It could be your friends, it could be your finances, it could be a multitude of things, your exercise habits or your sleep habits or your hygiene or your eating habits, your nutrition. So that kind of audit, I know it's not a great word, but that audit piece kind of does help with the reflection piece. You go back and look at what worked well, what I can do more of, or what I'd like to kind of do less of. So yeah, no, it's a good one, and thanks for kind of rounding that off, Sarah. I'll stay with you if you don't mind, Sarah, because we go back to the Z to A instead of the A to Z format, and I'll ask a question around your habits. So what habits help you feel grounded? And which ones might you gently let go of?
So I suppose the habits that help me feel most grounded are quite physical. So getting into cold water, whatever form that takes. That could be, going to the sea or having a cold shower. So that really helps me kind of come back to myself. You don't have time to think about anything else. Eating well, exercising. I suppose they're kind of, I see them as external habits in a way. So they help, yeah, they help anchor me. But the habits that or the habit maybe that I'm gently trying to let go of is more maybe internal. So maybe listening a bit too intently to that inner critic that we all have. So telling you things that aren't always true, and it often shows up maybe where you are in a period of stress or but I guess it's just noticing, and not to get rid of it entirely because it's extremely useful, that kind of inner critic. But again, going back to that word compassion that we've spoken about already, like meeting it maybe with more compassion, and curiosity has been a big one in the past while, just not to shut it down, but to be like, wow, I wonder why that's coming in, or so I suppose it's more continuing with the physical external habits that I'd say, and then maybe gently meeting the other one with a bit more compassion.
Lovely. No, lovely. Thanks for sharing that. And that's the anchoring piece is brilliant. So you do your sea swimming and your bits that anchor you, and then focus on I suppose having the awareness of the inner critic is great. That in fact you're able to articulate that, and then you flip it obviously to the inner champion. So you have that kind of balance again. But it's great that you have the awareness that there's times when that happens. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Lovely. And Robert, the same question to you, if you like.
Yep. So something that helps me feel grounded, a habit, I suppose, or a notion maybe. But I live in the family farm and run the family farm. So a lot of people around me have invested in quads and 4x4s if they're out and about and going to see cattle or whatever. For me, whenever I'm out, if I'm going to see cattle or whatever, I prefer to walk. Um, it's that one opportunity where there's nobody rushing to find me out in the field. But also, it's an opportunity to be close to nature. So many people have to drive to get to somewhere where they can walk outdoors. So why would I want to drive when I'm in the outdoors? So for me, that the habit is just taking shanks mare, as the old expression up here, for walking. Walking when I can, when the opportunity is there. Not always possible, but whenever possible. One habit I would like to get rid of, I suppose, is maybe the habit of like ruminating. For example, when I'm off this webinar, I'd be thinking, "Oh no, why did I say that?" or "Why did I not say that?" And that's something. It's a conscious effort to try and not do that. So yeah, that's just a couple of things.
I love it. Thanks, Robert. And I know you mentioned that we chatted last week about the farm piece. I love that fact that you're actually putting in some health and exercise into your day where you can walk instead of jump onto the 4x4 or whatever device you have. And then the rumination piece, I suppose we all tend to go down that road, but it's about being aware of it. So, but thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Yeah, same question, Jean, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I'll start off with what I want to let go of because it's the very same thing as you, Robert. Yeah, like just kind of overthinking, over planning, like Brian's question, over planning, overthinking, over analyzing. But also kind of trying to be, compassionate with myself as well. Like, like thinking, planning, analyzing, they're necessary as well, like, but just kind of maybe easing off the pedal sometimes with it, like, because if I come back to the kind of the theme of the year, it's not going to bring me peace and joy, like, so if I'm spending too much time doing that is not going to bring me peace and joy. So then, I suppose the helpful habits then that help me to feel grounded. I like to top and tail the day with mindfulness. So I call it morning and moonlight mindfulness. So kind of in the morning, I have my little start off routine. I light my candle, I have the classical music going. I'll probably forget to turn off the classical music, but there's no need either. And next thing, it's just there throughout the day in the background. It's lovely. And yeah, light the candle and just like set my intentions for the day. Just kind of check in with myself. How am I feeling? And yeah, and through kind of setting the intentions and what I need for myself, then I'll often kind of just think about other people, and I'm kind of connecting with other people then as well through that, like, so that's a lovely kind of just calm way for me to start off the day. And then in my moonlight mindfulness then is just before I go to sleep. I think about like the things that I'm grateful for during the day, and maybe hopeful for the following day as well. So, and that's kind of bringing in the glimmers there, Killian, like, so um but I suppose in that, what's keeping me present in that, because obviously, if you go into the past or go into the future, I suppose where's the mindfulness? So it's the feelings of the gratitude and the hope that are keeping me present in that moment as well, while I'm being grateful and being hopeful. And then just sticking to my routine, as much as possible, but also with a bit of flexibility. I think that always has me to feel grounded too.
No, I love the top and tail piece and the morning ritual and the moonlight. So it's nice to have that kind of peace of mind. You can start fresh and you can finish fresh, and yeah, whatever happens in between, you aim to stay present. No, it's lovely. Thanks for sharing, Gina. Appreciate that. And yeah, same question to you, Killian.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Similar to what's been mentioned, I suppose meditation, journaling, and exercise would be the three habits that I continue to do because with the meditation, I try to do it in the morning just to kind of give myself that breathing space to reflect and just be in the moment again. And that leads on to journaling then, and just have maybe a couple of prompt questions that I might ask myself. How are you today? What are you looking forward to? What are you grateful for? Something similar to Gina as well. And that again, if there's something on my mind, I'll just brain dump and just write down what's in my head and what Gene and Robert were talking about rumination. I have a lot of rumination and just I plonk that onto the paper as well, just whatever is bothering me on a particular day. And that's probably the habit. It's same as Gene and Robert about letting go of that as well, because yeah, you can go down rabbit holes and just be overthinking and yeah, and it's reflecting back and ask yourself, is this really important? And what can I do in the moment that will help me not ruminate? So it's kind of I journal to offset rumination, I suppose, if you get me. But with the exercise, then it's about, I suppose, going for walks, going to the gym, going swimming. But that makes me feel so much better in the day that it has a ripple effect on so many different aspects of my life as well. So, and that contributes to not just myself, but the people around me as well in my life.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Thanks, Killian. And it's one of the things that we do talk about at Mental Health Ireland is the creating the rituals. And all four of you folks have just mentioned stuff there around creating rituals or having rituals in place and having a structure, a bookend, a top and tail, your three, your meditation, your journaling, and your exercising. And that's great. No, it's really good to have. And they don't have to be heavy lifting, right? They don't have to be hard things to do. It's just routine based, small little steps to help your mental health and well-being. I think we have a chat. I'll jump into this one. I'll come to in a second. Actually, there's a question in the chat. I'll glance at it as I asked question. Question five. I'll come to you, Killian, on this one. So this is a question around, sometimes we face stressful situations, and when stress shows up, what is the one healthy way you'd like to respond in 2026?
Yeah, it's a good question. I suppose it's just not to be reactive. And even if I do feel I'm getting a bit stressed, is maybe just removing myself for a period of time, going for a walk, getting some breathing space, and just trying to find ways to offset the stress. Like again, it comes back to the meditation, the journaling, the exercise again, all help with dealing with stress. But it's just being aware of what has set me off in a stressful manner or whatever else, and just knowing what can I do again that will help me in the moment. I'm always looking for solutions when I feel a challenge. I'm in faced with a challenge. I always kind of look and pause and reflect and see what can I do right now that'll help. and yeah, it comes back to being not reactive, not just, I suppose, being aware of how you're feeling in the moments to be reactive as well, and just kind of taking stock of how am I feeling at this present moment, and yeah, making steps towards trying to offset the stress, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does, and I love the reactive piece. So removing yourself from the situation, understanding what's going on, trying to process it, and gain some awareness on what it is that's happening, and then
Just yeah,
move
just I was
back.
going to say, just another thing was be back to my breath as well. Just kind of if my breath is a little bit faster, just the anchor again, a couple of 3 to 4 to 5 deep breaths, and just kind of bring myself back to a more calmer state as well. And that's another thing I do that I forgot to mention. So
Yeah,
that's it,
lovely,
Carl.
lovely. That
Thanks.
that helps you being grounded. Yeah, lovely, Gina. I'll bring the same question to you if you like.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I was chatting with a friend recently, and we were talking about this is my emotional support cat here actually. If I were, yeah. But yeah, myself and my friend were just talking about, like how I suppose stress happens, you know, as part of life. Like you can't avoid it, and we know that. But I suppose yeah, like the whole thing about prevention is better than cure, and doing the things, and we all know the things that are good for us. We all know that we should eat well, and we should exercise, and we should get sunlight, and we should drink water, and we know all the things that we need to do. But sometimes, I suppose we're not as good as other times, and then we're aiming to be better all the time. But myself and my friend were just kind of noticing that actually doing the things and being consistent and showing up for ourselves and doing, the things that we know are good, that we're noticing more and more, I suppose, that in the moment we are able to respond that little bit better, and to, maybe do what we need to do for ourselves, like when we get stressed out, like, go off and go for the walk or whatever. Um, so yes, I suppose maybe yeah, trying to be consistent with doing the things that we know, so that it does fend off, I suppose, or provide that bit of resilience around the stress. But also, you know, um, to be fair to us, sometimes it doesn't matter what we do. Like life can just, bring about a few different stressful moments all at the same time. Um, or just one or two things that hit us particularly badly. And it can, move into distress, or, just become that bit worse, and we're not able to manage it. So, I suppose for me, I'm not going to be afraid of reaching out if I do need to, because life will get stressful and we can't avoid it. And sometimes things happen, and we'd rather they didn't, but they do, because this is life and this is real life. So things happen. So if I need support, I'll reach out, and like counselling or whatever it might be. So that's what I'm thinking about in 2026.
No, that's lovely, Gina, because like the question was, what is one healthy way you'd like to respond? So there's probably not one way of doing it. There's multiple ways. Like you mentioned, consistency with your friends, you kind of notice the changes in your good selves. And then you mentioned there when something does hit you, when you do become into a stressful state or de-stressed, you're reaching out to say other support. So there are many ways in which you can do it. But yeah, lovely. That's great. No, thanks for sharing that. It's good insights, great insights. Robert, I'll bring the same question to you if you don't mind.
Yep, I suppose to me, part of my answer is in the question and actually responding, because I have a habit of burying my head in some stressful situations and not responding, and that in itself is a negative response, because the things just don't always go away when you bury your head, and sometimes get worse. So actually responding, but yeah, as Killian said, responding proactively as opposed to knee-jerk reactions is something I would like to work on. I suppose one thing as well that I'm, recently, reflection on on things in the past, stressful situations, and thinking, looking back, well, really, I suppose what I'm thinking, in a situation, looking at it this way, how's it going to look in 2 years? Will it matter? And that sometimes helps a little bit and relieve some of the tension at the time. It helps maybe sort out what is a big deal and what isn't, so that we don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Or I suppose that we don't sweat the small stuff. I have a habit that I can get more stressed out over small things than I can over major issues. So um, yeah, trying to prioritize, and yeah, reflecting on things that happened in the past and how we reacted, and thinking, well, really, Now it's not a big deal at all. So maybe this situation down the road, it's not going to be a big deal. And that can help. Look, there are situations that are going to be a big deal and you have to deal with them. And that is, I'm not making light of that and will be stressful. But I suppose how we frame things and how we respond is important.
Yeah, that's lovely, Robert. No, it's a lovely idea the way you're talking about framing them. So framing them and maybe just grading them in terms of, yeah, priority and but also you mentioned about not putting your head in the sand and having a focus to take an action on an item that does pop up. So no, that's lovely. It's a nice mix of your approach. Lovely, thank you very much. And Sarah, I'll bring the same question to you.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, very much what Gina had mentioned about support. That was the way that I had kind of said if stress shows up this year, again, I know the physical things that I can do to support myself. But yeah, one way I'd kind of like to respond differently this year is by asking for help. And I think even listening to everyone talk here, you know, stress obviously happens. We know that, and it's necessary and good for us, to have some stress, I suppose, in our lives. But I guess thinking about mental health and even mental health promotion, having those skills to protect our well-being, often we forget about the wider determinants that affect kind of our day to day. So we can do all the things to prevent stress or kind of respond to stress when it happens, but then are we thinking a bit more about our work environment or where we live or the culture in our country? All of those things kind of cause stress, which are largely maybe out of our control. So it's kind of, again, going back to the title of the webinar, going gently with that, and that control the controllables, I suppose.
Yeah, what I can control, what I can't control is, yeah, absolutely lovely. No, it's lovely. A lot of it is around reflection and then what steps to take, and the gentle approach is definitely coming to the fore here. No, that's lovely. Thank you very much. I'll just read out what Anne-Marie dropped into the Q&A, and it's a comment from Anne-Marie around, I started bringing my diary journal to work. It might not be the norm, but I'm finding it since the start of January, jotting a few things in that are on my mind can help find clarity or just feel a bit better having written it down. So whether it's good or bad. So that's a nice piece there from Anne-Marie in terms of what Anne-Marie's taken the approach to bring her journal with her and to scribble things down and capture thoughts throughout the day, which is a lovely aspect. If anybody wants to jump in on that, please feel free to. We can come back to it, or we can reference it towards the end in the wrap up. But I'll jump on to the next question. We're okay time wise. We've plenty of time, so I'll go with this question to your good self, Sarah. What does self care, which would be physical, emotional, or mental well being, look like for you in simple everyday terms? So, what does self care, physical, emotional, mental well being look like for you in simple everyday terms?
Thanks. I suppose the what it looks like for me, like if I was to think about well-being or self-care, it's what does being well look like? So again, we all know it's something that needs nurturing and that it's so changeable. So what, might support me one day might not support me the next. So I suppose, again, going back to what I said at the start about maybe removing judgment, being a bit more compassionate in, if I am checking in with myself to find out how I am staying well, or noticing, instead of kind of saying what haven't I done or why am I feeling like this, asking yourself the questions, well, have I eaten well today, have I moved my body, who have I spoken to, so those questions instead. It's kind of that practice, I suppose, of self-awareness for self-care. So yeah, kind of removing that judgment and checking in regularly, because it's so changeable, I suppose, well-being in a sense. So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Less judgment, and you are doing well. You're moving forward, and things are good. Yeah, more compassion. Yeah, lovely, super. Yeah, Robert, we'll come to you on that question.
Yeah, I suppose for me, as I've said already, I've changed jobs, and for a few years I was in a role where it was, go and service provision, and we weren't really in the headspace of thinking about my own well-being. And so taking on this role, it's given me the opportunity to reflect on that and to recognize aspects, things that I actually might be involved in, the things that I do, whenever I take time to notice what's going on around me, that they're actually quite good for me. Like as I say, even working on the farm, I'm outside, I'm in nature, doing physical work, working with animals. That's all been scientifically proven that it's good for your mental health and well-being. And I haven't always appreciated that. So I suppose I'm trying to have an appreciation of the things that I do, and recognizing what's good for my well-being, recognizing all the things that maybe aren't so good, and taking steps to alleviate that. But yeah, just being mindful of things that I'm doing, being practicing gratitude, being grateful for what I have is another something else that is crucial towards well-being. So yeah, so
Yeah, lovely, Robert. That's great. No, it's great to have the recognition piece, assessing, what's working well, or what you could do, what else you could bring or change. Lovely. No, it's great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I'm bringing the same question to you, Gina.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a friend that I have that's great for always making sure that we've something nice planned, like, so and it's great to have somebody like that, because sometimes you can kind of be plodding along day to day. So she's great for kind of saying, "Do you know what, let's do such and such thing," and then we start planning, and she's great excitement. So I think, yeah, like just around awareness and balance is what helps me around self-care. So awareness around what I need, and kind of, just having something planned, like, because self-care obviously takes different forms, and like, depending on what my needs are in any point in time, self-care could be doing a financial review, or it could be, a night away with friends, like, so I suppose just awareness of what it is that I need at this particular point in time, and then balance. So not focusing overly on, maybe just on nights away, but like, kind of say, well, okay, but what are the other parts of my life? And if we have time later on, I might just mention the wheel of life there. I've already mentioned it, but that's how I kind of keep an eye on balance as well, as through the wheel of life. So I might talk more about that in a while.
I love the wheel of life, so we can have a whole chat about that, or a separate webinar. I love it. But I love the piece you mentioned there was, what do I need now? So what's now for me? What do I need? Like you said, it could be that breakaway, it could be that time off work, it could be that cup of coffee, it could be whatever. So it's kind of like checking in with yourself and understanding what I need now, which will help you have something to look forward to. And that having that friend in the group is always great. But yeah, something to put into the calendar. Killian, to come to you on the same question.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. I think self-care for me means different. It's different every day. And around I suppose the physical health you mentioned, it's getting in a good solid routine and making myself feel good through that. Being active and being aware of my energy levels. If I'm not feeling 100% to whatever, go for the walk, even if it's 5, 10 minutes of something, then I'm still getting some part of the day a bit of exercise in. And then around the emotional health would be around not being afraid to open up if I'm facing a challenge. I suppose many, many years ago, I used to bottle a lot of things up, and I know the benefits of being able to share with someone you can trust and share what's on your minds if something is bothering you, and not being afraid to, share what's going on, your emotions, feelings, thoughts, whatever it may be, to someone that will sit there and actively listen, because that's really important. And I have no problem even reaching out to support at different times of the year as well, because I know that will keep my mental health and well-being on a positive note. And again, like I said earlier, it's going to make myself feel better, but other people in my life as well. And yeah, I don't know, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent now, but I hopefully that has answered around the self-care piece.
No, it's great. It's the fact that you even mentioned the phrase opening up. It's brilliant. I know there's a few men on the chat here, but like, men are normally typically not great at talking or whatever. But it's that piece about opening up and sharing and having that active listening with a colleague or someone you can trust. And Killian, your good friends in the Focus Program Limerick group mentioned that they like your piece around the glimmer moments. So they thank you for that, which is brilliant. Thank you for the recognition on that. It's brilliant. Look, we're moving along nicely. We got 11 minutes. We got time. Hopefully, another two questions, and then we'll do a little wrap up at the end. Anybody want to share any comments? We'll do that piece towards the end. I'll jump into this question, and we'll go with If you could describe your ideal day in 2026, what would it include? And what is one small step towards that? So your ideal day in 2026, what would it include? And what is one small step towards that? So Killian, I'll jump back to you. We keep that format.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. I don't know, to be honest. It's a difficult question to answer because I feel the work that we're doing with Mental Health Ireland is really meaningful. And an ideal day, like we're impacting and making meaningful change around mental health well-being to so many people. And yeah, I don't know what an ideal day would look like. Is just being able to do more of that. I don't know, and just and in on if I wasn't working, I suppose spending time, good quality time with my family, my daughter, my partner, seeing my parents, my sisters, just being able to connect with them because we get have such a good time together. And yeah, maybe I live near the coast as well, so maybe going off to Lahinch or Milltown Malbay in County Clare and just taking it easy because I feel sometimes I'm constantly on the go. And then even over the weekend, I sat down for a couple of minutes and I felt I could fall asleep, but I just got up again. I feel I have to be more intentional about my resting and recharging and energy levels at certain times because I could just keep going and not just, continue on. But yeah, that's another thing probably an ideal day would just be resting, recharging, but doing the things that bring me joy as well at the same time.
Yeah, no, lovely. And it's like this, it's like you said there, it's like finding that quality time. And it's like having I suppose the empowerment to switch off your device or your laptop when you're finished work and just, rest, recover and just go again. Spend quality time with your nearest and dearest. Now that's lovely. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, Gina, we'll jump to you.
Yeah, thanks. I feel a little bit guilty saying this, but I've worked hard for it. I kind of I get that. I have it. I have the ideal day nailed down. Yeah, and so for me, it's like mindfulness, some form of mindfulness, starting and ending the day, nature somehow, just being connected to nature somehow, some creativity that helps me, Killian, with sitting down because yeah, I could be hopping up as well. Yeah, so creativity, if I have something there that I can work on, it helps me to rest while also my mind is kind of busy on something nice like connection, some form of connection then with with either family or friends or wherever that may come from. Um, some form of movement and coffee. Definitely coffee has to feature in there as well. Um, so I feel a little bit guilty because it's like I'm being serious, I suppose, like, I know that there's people watching and they might say, well, maybe they're very far away from having an ideal day every day. And maybe there's people that are on here and they completely have it nailed as well. But it is hard work. And there was certainly times in my life where I was very far away from having an ideal day and I had to do an awful lot of work to get support and things like that around it. So I suppose I'm saying it, but I'm not trying to be glib in any way because I know that it's hard won sometimes, depending on where you are in your life. So yeah.
No, it's lovely. It's lovely you share that, Gina, because if you've worked hard to get to that point where you understand what works for you and you have your book ending and you have your top and tail, and that's golden. And people on the call who are listening in can strive to get that into their lives or work on it. And if it's a day that works for you or you've had moments from certain days, you want to piece them all together. Yeah, super. No, that's great. It's great to be able to share that. Yeah, Robert, the same question to you. Yeah, if you like.
Yeah, goodness, this is a big question, and I've changed my mind several times on the answer. I'm going to frame it maybe around the five ways to well-being. The opportunity to connect with someone. Maybe it might be just a family member because life can be busy and you don't have time to talk. You might have time to shout at each other, but sitting down to talk is another thing. Or maybe reconnect with someone else. Being active, yeah, love to be able to go out every day, go for a run. I'd love to go and do the park run under 20 minutes, but that's a dream. But even just to get out and take notice, be aware of what I'm doing, so that life doesn't just fly past and I'm going, what happened there? Keep learning, that's a massive one. And look, I suppose one thing with starting this new job, there's been lots of training and new things to learn. And that's really good at any stage in life, just to keep learning. And any day you learn something is a good day. And giving something back, whether it's time time spent with someone, whatever. And I mean that's the ideal. But in some ways, an ideal day could be, when things don't always go well, but you're able to cope and you're able to get through it. And at the end of the day, say, well, look, it wasn't perfect, but here I am. I've made it.
Yeah,
Um,
brilliant. No, lovely. No, thanks for that, Robert. That's super. And like the five ways to well-being is one of the components we bring to our workshops and our talks, and there's some details of that on our website. It's a nice one to look at and reflect on and see what elements of that you're doing and what you can do more of or less of. So yeah, it's a nice reflection piece there, Robert. Thank you very much for that. Sarah, yeah, we'll come to you.
Yes, similar. Thanks, Carl, to what many others have said. But yeah, getting out in nature. So an ideal day for me in 2026 that I will make happen is I will, you know, pack the bags, have a cup of tea with me, do like a ham and cheese mustard sandwich out to Connemara, up Diamond Hill or some sort of hill, walk up the way anyway. Have a bit of a tea at the top and then come back down. And this can, you know, hopefully with some people who are willing to come on the journey with me. And then, yeah, find some sort of salty water nearby. And on the way back, hot chips and soup, you know. So revolving around food and connection and, yeah, nature. But you know, you get home and you have that kind of salty layer in your skin, and yeah, that's just a happy day for me.
No, that's lovely. It's lovely. It's lovely that you know that that's what you think. The nutrition piece and the seawater. It's lovely that you have that. You know that. That's similar to what Gina mentioned. That you know what your day what a good day brings for you. Thank you very much for that, Sarah. We're closing in on the 3 o'clock deadline at four minutes to go. There is a comment in the chat from Maretta. And Maretta's asking if we could do a recap at the end of all questions posed through the discussion. Maretta would like to sit with the questions later to answer them for herself, which is super. And I'm loving all of the ideas that have come up. So I suppose the one thing is we do a quick recap. I might just do around the houses now, just the final words. But what we'll have, Moretta, on that one is this is being recorded, and this will be up on our YouTube page in the next couple of days. So we have kind of reflected on some of those questions, and hopefully that we've answered them on the call, or we've definitely highlighted them and called them out. And we'll do a quick tell you what I'll do really quickly. Yeah, we'll do a quick, very quick recap around the room. Just say any final thoughts, and I want to just show one or two slides, and then it'll probably be 3 o'clock, and we'll wrap it up. So, Sarah, I'll come back to your good self if you have any final words to share with the group.
No, just yeah. I think the main thing coming out of today was for me was gentleness and compassion. I think that was the overall theme, which was great. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for facilitating it.
Gentleness and compassion. No, that's lovely, lovely. Thank you for that, Sarah. Yeah, Robert, we'll come to you for your final thoughts.
yeah, I suppose, look, the thing was a gentle reset. So be gentle on yourself. And look, you can be doing everything right and things will still go wrong. And that's not, the things will happen outside of your control. And, you'll have to deal with things. And sometimes good to reflect, as has been mentioned before. Reflection is a good practice, reflecting on things, and how things worked in the past and what might work in the future. And remember, like, what works for some people doesn't always work for others, but it's your experience. You're the best person to know um, how to be gentle on yourself and what to do this year. So
Lovely, lovely.
yeah.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. Yep, I'll come to you, Gina.
Yeah, I'll just use my time to just share with people about the Wheel of Life again. So if you want to look that up, there's 8 sections in the wheel, and it just helps you can identify then the 8 most important areas of your life, and then that helps you to kind of just get a visual around how to balance your time effectively, and invest in those areas. So thanks very much, Carol, for organising it and for everybody. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Gina. Love that. The Wheel of Life. Yeah, great. Killian, come to you.
Yeah, thanks, Carol, for facilitating a great discussion. I've learned from all of us, to be honest. It's been lovely. But final words, I think, yeah, for me, it's probably just being intentional about things going forward. Sarah mentioned about being gentle and as well, just, yeah, taking it day by day, step by step, keep doing the best we can, I suppose, and just being curious about life as well. There's so much learning, there's so much things we can do, but just taking it at our own pace as well, and do, like I said earlier, do the things that brings us joy with those glimmer moments, and yeah, that's about it.
That's all about, yeah, taking the joy out of every day. It's great, lovely. Thank you. I'm just going to share a quick slide on some of the stuff we do at Mental Health Ireland. Angela has dropped a quick note into the Q&A around what she's done at the beginning of January. She started to take a photo every day of something beautiful. So sometimes it's a challenge and sometimes it takes some searching, but she finds a photo, which is a lovely thing to do. Angela, thanks for that. And Anne-Marie, thank you so much for the great webinar. Really enjoyed it. And Angela got a lot, or Anne-Marie got a lot from it. And please do more. I'll just share really quickly as we wrap up the slides on from the webinar. With Mental Health Ireland, what we do is in Mental Health Ireland is we do talks and I'll just advance the slide one. Yeah, we do workshops and we do talks. So we do workshops for the community and the workplace around the three you see on the screen there, which is engage with mental health, expand your well-being toolkit, and talk about what matters. So as we are on the time, I'll share the support numbers on the screen. You'll see some supports there if in a crisis or supports or for more information. There's some good websites on display there. And the Mental Health Ireland web link is down the bottom left-hand corner for more information on the work that we do. So I'll wrap it up there. I want to thank you very much. Thanks to all of the attendees and thank you all of the panelists. So we hope that this conversation has given you something practical, some ideas, some inspiration to start your year with clarity and for some calm and some intention. And remembering that a reset does not have to be overwhelming. It's about small, sustainable steps that nurture your mental health and your well-being. So thank you very much for your time. And yeah, thank you. We'll say goodbye.